Greetings, friends of the Great Second Advent Movement, and welcome to the Present Truth Studies YouTube channel. I'm your host, Brother Eric. Today we're going to look at a topic about how it is that the devil works within the ranks of the church, trying to lead Adventists astray and discredit the work of Ellen White, and how we look and view the Catholic Church. So we're going to look at a case that's caused some discussion recently in Adventist circles, where a couple of Adventist theologians, Reinder Bruinsma and Dennis Fortin, met with a Catholic priest and talked about what we could learn from the Catholics and vice versa. And so this caused quite a bit of discussion. What we want to do today is kind of peel back the layers and look under the hood and see what's really going on and what the Bible and Spirit Prophecy says about this type of activity and why we should be definitely on guard. So I'll do a short presentation here, so come on in with me. Here's our thumbnail. Warning: how does Satan work within church gates? And these three gentlemen here, are they your friends or not? They're definitely not. Two theologians, Reinder Bruinsma, retired theologian, Seventh-day Adventist Church, and Dennis Fortin, a PhD, retired professor from Andrews University Theological Seminary. So, leading figures. And then the gentleman in the middle is a Catholic priest. So what's the ruckus about? Well, Elder Bruinsma has published a new book, and he's out to promote it, called Adventists and Catholics, A History of a Turbulent Relationship. Is this the type of thing? It is published by Andrews University Press. So is this the type of thing you should be promoting to Adventists and reading? The answer is absolutely no. But why? What are the reasons why? So we'll look at this in a little more detail. So what's the thing that caused the controversy? Well, this poster came out advertising a meeting, Adventism and Catholicism in a Changing World. What can they learn from each other? And it was to be held on Sabbath, October 12th at Loma Linda University. And this was shared around the Adventist world and social media, and people said, what are we doing? What's going on here? This is obviously a concern. The real motive was to promote this new book by Reinder Bruinsma, a retired theologian from the Adventist Church, and this book being published by Andrews University Press, the leading theological seminary in North America. So, sounds like it's got the approval of recognized theologians in the church, but is this a safe thing to do? And the answer is no. And part of the fallout with this was this meeting was canceled and it was redirected to another place. We'll learn more about that. So let's look at the questions, some of the snares of the devil in our midst. We need to be wide awake to this. Ellen White says something to the effect that Satan fears nothing more than we become wise to his devices. Well, this is a case study, an illustration of how he's working to undermine the pillars of our faith with learned men in our midst. So some of the questions we're going to go. How does Satan try to undermine the pillars of Seventh-day Adventist faith? Where we're going to see exactly how. This example, how do faithful Seventh-day Adventists do to become wise to the devices of the devil? How should we recognize this and what we should do about it to warn others? And then what can faithful Seventh-day Adventists do to warn our brethren of these snares of Satan? And that's part of the purpose that we're doing this video today, is to cry aloud, spare not, sound the alarm, and how to deal with not just the meeting, because most of us wouldn't be attending it, but the book. It's going to be widely spread and promoted around the Adventist world. You'll probably find it on the bookshelves of the Adventist book centers for sale. And that's where the danger lies. So let's look at this text for meditation. What does inspiration say about this? This comes from a statement, Review and Herald, January 1, 1844, paragraph 7. It says, "There are men professing godliness who are persecutors, false teachers, tempters, seducers, They have cultivated their talents for this work, and they employ all their ingenuity in disseminating unbelief, impiety, infidelity, licentiousness. They are fellow workers with Satan, laboring with like zeal, diligence, and success to draw away souls after them. Had the followers of Christ been cultivating their ability, they might be wise unto salvation, able to discern the devices of Satan. Were they workers together with God, we would now have an army of faithful men prepared to stand in defense of the truth and to meet and successfully expose the deceptions of the ungodly. This is what we're called to do, is to be wide awake to the devices of Satan. And recognizing that perhaps it's leading men in our midst, some of them that are disseminating unbelief. In this particular case, this book from Reinder Bruinsma. Also, impiety, infidelity, licentiousness, there's other avenues that Satan works in the Adventist colleges and universities in particular, but we're going to look about doubting the spirit of prophecy. That's really the root of this, and the pillars of our faith, as we'll find out here. Here's another statement, Selected Messages, Volume 1, page 122. Enemies within the gate. We have far more to fear from within than from without. The hindrances to the strength and success are far greater from the church itself than from the world. Unbelievers have a right to expect that those who profess to be keeping the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus will do more than any other class to promote and honor by their consistent lives, by their godly example, and their active influence the cause which they represent. But how often have the professed advocates of the truth proved the greatest obstacle to its advancement? The unbelief indulged, the doubts expressed, and the darkness cherished encourage the presence of evil angels and open the way for the accomplishment of Satan's devices. So notice here that creating unbelief and doubts about what we have been given to us as a people, especially through inspiration, through the spirit of prophecy, is a means to undermine the pillars of our faith. And this is exactly what this book is doing. So once again, this is the meeting at Loma Linda that was scheduled, but really its purpose was to promote this book that's going to be published and sent around the Adventist world, especially to church leaders. Now, should we read a book like this? Well, the answer is no. In the same way, would you recommend Seventh-day Adventists read the book by John Harvey Kellogg called The Living Temple, where he introduced pantheistic thoughts that are very dangerous about the nature of God? And the answer is absolutely not. I've been in Seventh-day Adventist for almost 3 decades, and there was no way I would ever read a copy of The Living Temple. Now, I know what's in it because, thank God, Ellen White and her grandson, Willie, had to deal with that issue and read that book and refuted it, and you can read the answer or how to understand the nature of God and who God is and where God resides in Testimonies of the Church, Volume 8. Short and to the point. So when you know the truth, you don't have to read error. And thank God for that. So for all faithful 70 Adventists, if you haven't, you should read the Testimonies of the Church, volumes 1 to 9, cover to cover. That's for us as a people. So this event was originally scheduled, and then it was canceled. And this report coming, some Adventists on the liberal spectrum, Spectrum magazine, were upset about this because they reported apparently Alexander Carpenter, one of the editors at Spectrum magazine, said Ted Wilson, president, pressures Loma Linda University Health to cancel event. This book introduction by Reinder Bruinsma. And so he made some serious allegations about the motives behind it. We won't go into that, but it was clear that Elder Wilson came in and canceled event here because he is one of the trustees on their board of directors or whatever, the trustees of the university. So he's used his influence. Now, a lot of Adventists say, oh, that's great. Elder Wilson's coming in to defend the faith. Hold your breath until we get to the end here. We should be cautious. I mean, it is true. His motion to get this off the campus was the right thing to do, but there's two sides of the coin, as we'll see. So some Adventists were upset by this, but they were determined to get their way to promote the book, and so it was rescheduled at a nearby high school, and it was recorded. It was at the North Vista High School, and the whole presentation, Elder Bruinsma up here promoting the book and saying all kinds of flattering gestures towards the Catholic Church, was recorded here, unlisted video, and some other Adventist YouTube channels brought this to the front, over 2 hours. I would not recommend watching this. It's horrifying. It's just nauseating. It's disgusting. This is how academics work. They get up and they flatter each other with flowery adjectives and all the great things that Catholic Church did and what we can learn from them, and vice versa, what Catholics can learn from Adventism. And it was just like I say, it's just like shocking. It was reprehensible, really, that these men would stand up and do this. And then it was followed by his cohort in crime, the learned Dr. Dennis Fortin, a retired professor at the Theological Institute at Andrews University, got up and did the typical academic thing. And this is why I wanted to comment on this. This is how academics work. They like to flatter each other. So he gets up, well, what I liked about Elder Bruinsma's presentation, and he highlights a few points. And I found this particularly reprehensible. In academic circles, they tend to do this, flatteries to, support each other. Now, if it's a non-salvational topic in science, okay, a little of that goes on. I came from that background. And there's some of that to be expected, especially if you're a younger faculty and you want to gain favor of a more notable, learned professor or, influential person. You'll sit up in front and ask questions and try to, nudge up and get attention. But this particular case of it, I watched about 10 minutes and it was over the top. And what makes it so concerning is the fact that this theologian is calling into question the very pillars of our faith. He mentioned two things in particular, that the work of J.N. Andrews, one of the church pioneers, on his book called The History of the Sabbath, First Day of the Week. This was originally published, Steam Press, Battle Creek, Michigan, that Andrews made errors associating the change from Sabbath to Sunday to the Catholic Church, that he made a mistake, and later scholarship and research have exposed this in the 1970s. Really? So this is clearly suggesting doubt on the integrity of the work of J.N. Andrews, a church pioneer. And furthermore, he implied that things that Ellen White said in Great Controversy were not properly referenced. And modern scholarship, And they go off into this, and what they're doing is sowing seeds of doubt on the credibility of the work of J.N. Andrews and Ellen White. And Ellen White, we believe, operated under inspiration. This book, of all books, is exposing the devices of Satan. And Ellen White was under direct satanic attack trying to write this book. Satan hated this book and tried to destroy Ellen White while she was writing it. So now these learned doctors are saying, oh, there's issues with it, and she didn't do something right or here or there. And this is why this is absolutely poisonous. So they want to flatter and say, oh, well, we got these great things from the Catholic Church. For example, I'm in a lovely church, and it's got the stained glass, and we like to enjoy it, and that is a tradition from the Catholic Church. And Australia, the Catholic Church was leaders in how to get incorporated or recognized as a university status and accredited. And we were able to learn from them how to expedite the promotion of Avondale to university status. Oh, wonderful. Is that a good thing? Accreditation with the world? Do you know what Ellen White says about this? Testimonies, Volume 5, page 211, says the church has turned its back on Christ and is steadily retreating towards Egypt, a symbol of the world. And this is a textbook case of it. So they're all flattered and, oh, it's so great. Everybody wants to be a university, but what good is it? They've walked away from the fundamental principles of our faith and are promoting all kinds of strange things. You wonder why Adventist youth come out infidels, or promoting LGBTQ stuff and who knows what. This is why. They're sowing seeds of doubt about the fundamental pillars. This is what the young people should be studying, because it's true. And so that's what academics bring you. God's no respecter of person. No matter how many letters are piled up behind your name. I mean, I have one of them, but I don't promote it. It's irrelevant. PhD stands for piled higher and deeper, and that's pretty much what they do. And so this is why this is so dangerous. And so the recommendation for not reading his book is a valid one. Now, some people say, well, it's great. Elder Ted Wilson came in and stomped this out and said, we don't want the meeting. We'll give him credit for that. However, Elder Ted Wilson is also compromised. For example, we all know the case of how he stood during the COVID crisis. Pro-vaccine, pro-mask, pro-mandates, and failed to support the religious liberty of rights of conscience of individual Adventists. And Conrad Vine dared to call him out. And this caused a huge ruckus, as you're all aware. So he's clearly compromised there. And as other people pointed out, well, wait a minute. He's claiming we got to defend the great controversy. But wait, I hope you don't have a short memory here. But wasn't it Elder Wilson? I saw this in a comment on a YouTube video. Wasn't it Elder Wilson that a few years ago promoted this book, The Great Hope? What was this? A castrated version of the Great Controversy. And what did they do? They redacted or took out portions that were specifically pointed commentary on the Catholic Church. Oh, they didn't want to ruffle the feathers of Catholics. So they took an inspired book and castrated it. And that was promoted by Elder Ted Wilson. It was under his authority. So friends, what can we learn from this? You can't trust any man. The Bible says, "Cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostrils." Isaiah 2, verse 22, or Jeremiah 17, verse 5. Cursed is the man that trusts in the arm of flesh. So our take-home lesson here, friends, is we have to search the Bible for ourselves. Individually, you can't rely on your husband, your spouse, your friends, the elder, anybody, or church leaders, especially the ones with degrees behind their name, because they get, like we did the video on Desmond Ford, a very learned man, and he goes off and gets these PhDs, and he brings back in preterism and undermines the pillars of the faith, 1844, 2,300 days. If you haven't seen that video, check a link in the description box below, exposing the dangers of Desmond Ford theology. But that's what, quote, higher education gets you. So you cannot trust learned men of the Biblical Research Institute or so forth. They're the ringleaders of apostasy. We should be especially on guard of trusting that you have to prove all things. Hold fast to that which is good. Despise not prophesying. We need to hold fast to the spirit of prophecy and be looking for inspiration to explain things and not take the testimony of men. So I hope you found this enlightening, is the dangers of trusting in men, even at the highest levels. We can't do that. They've never been venues for new truth coming through them. They always rise up and oppose it. It's always the case. So if God has a message for his people today, we should be looking at it coming through YouTube channels or through the layman's movement rather than the learned men, because they're ringleaders. Like I say, this Reinder Bruinsma, this new book being promoted from Andrews University Press is garbage. It's an uninspired pile of dung, man's dung. And the only safe and sane thing is to burn it if you have a copy. But certainly don't recommend reading it. Stick to inspiration. And we'll do a study here soon on the Golden Bull, Zechariah 4, showing us exactly how we get truth from the Bible to the church. Very interesting present truth study. If you're not familiar with that, stay tuned. Please subscribe to the channel and look for future videos. So we appreciate your time. May God richly bless your search for truth as for hidden treasure. Until we meet again, Godspeed.